How does Texas stack up when it comes to civic engagement, and what's behind the Keep Austin Weird slogan? We'll have some answers for you coming up next on Capital Coffee Talk.
They need to be held accountable.
Hi everybody, Judy Maggio with KLRU's Decibel, and I'm here with Ben Philpott.
Ben Philpott from KUT.
And we are first of all going to talk about our coffee mugs, because we always start with our coffee mugs.
Mine's the same old whatever.
Mine's Keep Austin Weird.
Okay.
And I want to talk to you about this because you wrote at AT Explained about the origins of Keep Austin Weird.
Yeah.
It started in 2000, a librarian
Yep.
called into
Co-op.
Okay.
And as there was a fundraiser that Co-op Radio was doing, and as you know, we also will do at KUT after the donation. They say, well, do you have any comments, or why are you making the donation? And the guy said, well, I'm just making it to keep Austin weird. And his wife said, boy, that's a catchy slogan. And so they made some bumper stickers. Then it really kind of took off, I think, in 2002, 2003, 2004, somewhere around there. There was a big debate about the possibility of a Borders bookstore opening where the Whole Foods downtown
and
is
Waterloo
now. Yeah, and it was going to be right in that place where the Whole Foods is now. And of course, they do both music, or did rather, both music and books, and they're right beside Book People and Waterloo Music.
Two great locally homegrown businesses.
So the businesses there, kind of used Keep Austin Weird, shop local as their rallying cry, and that's where you started to see all the T-shirts popping up.
And
everywhere.
that it became as a way to support local businesses and keeping Austin weird. Okay, that's your Austin history lesson for today. Speaking of Austin history and all things Austin government, we want to introduce our guest with us today, and this is Amy Stansbury. And you have a mission, really. Tell us about what you're up to and how it fits into our kind of nerdy civics and politics.
Yeah, very nerdy. Yeah, the whole idea. For the past few years, I've been working to try and get more millennials to participate, especially in our local government system, because that's a big area where people, might know what's happening in the presidential election, might be following national news, but a lot of times completely ignore what's happening in their own backyards, right?
And that's where people can really have a pretty loud voice.
Exactly. I always tell people, just look at the numbers game of it. Think about how many people your city council member represents. Like 80,000-ish, I think. And that sounds like a lot, but Ted Cruz represents almost 30 million of us, right? Yep. And so if you're trying to send an email to someone and hoping to get a response, you're way more likely to get a response from your city council person than your senator or the president or something.
You're way more likely to be able to make a county meeting or a city council meeting than you are fly to DC for something.
Right. And the thing is, you can also have such a big impact here at the local level, which I think a lot of people aren't aware of as much. One of my favorite examples comes from the environmental community. There's I would say in Austin, maybe there's a group of 50 super hardcore environmental nerd types, right? That show up to every city council meeting and always, on first name basis with their city council person. And those people, a few years ago really worked hard to get Austin to embrace solar energy, right? And get city council to make these big solar purchases. And they were successful, and our city council and then our electric utility made these big solar purchases. And today, Austin is responsible for about 40% of all of the large-scale solar installed in the entire state of Texas. It's huge.
So just started with this little ripple effect to keep building and building
and you can think about that for any issue, but that's a group of 50 Austinites who worked hard on something and had this impact on a state level. Yeah. And so that's the big thing that I've been trying to share with folks is no matter what issue it is you care about, chances are you can do something right here in Austin and affect change in your own community. Yeah.
What's the name of your group?
A Functional Democracy.
And you can go to?
afunctionaldemocracy.com. That's all my plugs, yes.
Yeah, get all the plugs in.
Yeah, and then kind of tied to that, we have a book out right now, which is kind of the result of our latest project. So, like I said, I'd been just basically begging anyone who would listen to me for the past few years about why local government is important, hosting happy hours, really gauged again at people in their 20s and 30s here in town.
Just like Ben and me.
Exactly, just like you guys, you've been at them. A lot of happy hour events, bring beer into it, try and make it fun. And at the end of all these, you know, I just kept getting asked, oh, that was great information, but like I need more, or where I need it written down. And
so you have it all in a book.
Exactly. So a few months ago, I got connected with a team of local artists here in town, Hal and Jordan, and we became quick friends. And we're like, let's make an activity book about this. So that's what we put together. And again, it's geared towards that millennial age set. It's meant to be fun and just kind of gives you all the basics, like who's the mayor, who's in city council, how do you get in contact with them, how do you attend a city council meeting, all those questions.
Just the basics of local government. We want to show a little video that you put together speaking at, was that on campus?
Yeah, it was here on campus at UT.
Okay, let's take a look at the video of Amy in action.
So raise your hand if you could tell me who Steve Adler is.
So, raise your hand if you know who Steve Adler is.
We do.
And we do want people to know that the mayor is having his State of the City address coming up next week. I think it's on the 20th. And you have a little game, right?
Yeah.
It is the 20th.
It is the 20th, yeah. And
I was thinking something else.
for people who aren't as aware, you know, the State of the City address, it's in the name, it's kind of like the State of the Union that the president does. And I'm a big advocate of, you know, if you've never followed local government before and you're trying to get involved, like listening to his speech is a good entry point because he kind of lays out his vision for the year. It's the big picture, right? He takes the time to explain things. It's not like a city council meeting where there's all these issues being thrown at you at once. So it's a good way to kind of get a picture of what the big issues city's going to be working on. And so in the past, I've brought together groups of young people to attend the meeting, to attend the speech together. And this year we're doing things a little different. We're going to do a watch party. And during the party, we're going to play a State of the City bingo game.
Will alcohol be involved in this?
Well, you know, it will be at a bar, and if people choose to drink, they're allowed
to. Just curious.
But yeah, the whole idea is just to make it a little more fun and approachable. And I think that's the big thing about trying to get people involved in local government. It's like, where can we meet people where they're at? You know, at a bar that they're already going to be at, perfect, and then convince them to watch a little bit of what their elected officials are doing.
Yeah, it's intimidating.
It is intimidating.
What are some of the spaces? I want to know what you got there.
So we've got a few ones that are dealing with our big issues. So Code Next obviously is on there. Police.
So Code Next, we have to say the latest draft is out. The third draft came out yesterday, and it sounds like it's a little more neighborhood friendly, but that's probably a topic for another show.
Yes.
Multiple shows, probably.
Multiple shows. We did a whole special on it, actually. So
yeah.
Yes.
And then we have some fun ones on there, too, like barbecue or Matthew McConaughey, who knows, you know, some wild cards. I have this one quote on here that I hear Mayor Adler say all the time. The world can completely lose its mind, but we'll still be Austin, Texas. I think he says that in almost every speech.
You know, I think it's interesting. I mean, obviously, this is to, you know, they say something, you cross it off or take a shot or whatever. But it's also interesting that this is essentially lays out what a lot of the most important things that Austin is having to deal with. You know,
right, homelessness, gentrification, soccer stadium.
Yeah, soccer stadium's hot right now.
Right, of course, traffic. I'm sure I'll say traffic a million times during this speech. But just to make it fun and easy for people to start to get into it. And, you know, kind of like the big dream of the project is like a place, you know, we want Austin to be a place where civics and knowledge of this stuff is really at the core of our culture. So, you know, you think it's like so easy to go downtown, you grab a drink, there's so many restaurants, you see live music. What if also you just stop by City Hall to, you know, go to a city council meeting every once in a while, right? What if that was part of your day-to-day life experience?
But honestly, if we want to continue to make, and I'm a little bit too passionate about these things, I think, because I love Austin so much, but if we want to continue to make Austin the city that it's been, you know, we want to keep the music scene alive, if we want to keep people civically engaged, you know, if we want to keep our environment the way it's been. I mean, change is important and it has to happen, but we want to hear people's voices. This is our home, you know, and if you don't weigh in, how will you feel like you have a say in its future, you know?
Yeah, and one of the positive things, I think, you know, a lot of times I talk to people and they feel like things aren't going the way they want. It's very discouraging. It's hard to imagine why voting is important, why it's worth the time to start to learn these things. And maybe as a slight lead into what we're probably going to talk about later, but you know, you look at the voting statistics here in Austin, and especially at our local level, our last mayoral election in 2014, in the runoff, which ultimately decided who our mayor would be, 85% of eligible Austinites didn't vote. 85%.
And it did turn around some of those races because the original election was during the presidential race. So in November, everybody came out, but when it came for the runoff, nobody showed up.
So we have a mayor who's serving us right now. No knocks to Mayor Adler, but he's serving us, and only 15% of Austinites picked him.
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy, and you can see that really negatively, like that's very sad. Or it's also a big opportunity, like if you are not pleased with certain issues, you voting actually could have a huge difference.
And that does work even at the state level. There have been, you know, different reports over and over again showing that that Governor Greg Abbott was essentially elected by 800,000 Texans, because 800,000 votes was the number of votes that he got in the 2014 Republican primary. Because once that 800,000 selected him as the Republican candidate, that was it.
Yeah.
And you know, you go down to, and the same thing is even true in on the other side here in Austin. I mean, the small number of people in some of the heavy Democratic state districts, state house districts here, you know, once the
Democrat is elected in those
pick,
districts, and say, for example, Donna Duke's district or something
Right.
like that. Well, that's going to be a great segue into a big report that's going to be announced tomorrow. It's the 2018 Texas Civic Health Index. The Annette Strauss Institute spearheaded this, and Leadership Boston, KUT, KLRU are also part of it. And I wanted to share some of those statistics, give you a little preview. We're going to be talking more about it tomorrow morning at the Leadership Boston breakfast.
You got authorization to do this, right?
No, but
are you breaking the embargo? Okay,
probably.
all right, okay.
I don't think this is embargoed. I'll suffer the consequences if it is. Okay, so the first statistic that it found, and this was a survey, I think, of voters in 2016. Texas ranks 44th in voter registration and 47th in voter turnout. I understand that's up slightly from 2013 where we were 50th, so we're making some progress. But those numbers to me say it all. I mean, even if you register to vote, you got to show up at the polls, so you can't really make your voice heard.
Right. I mean, we've got essentially, people talk about living in bubbles a lot. Well, here in Travis County, we kind of have a bubble of not too bad voter engagement.
Got great registration numbers.
Registration numbers are like 91%, 92% of the voting age population is registered to vote. But you know, as Amy was saying, in the city race for the runoff for mayor, that didn't matter. For presidential elections, we get up to about 60%, but that's it. For statewide races like governor, lieutenant governor, maybe about 40%, 35 to 40%. And again, that's not having even the majority of people come out and make their voice heard in this county. The numbers, it'd be very interesting to see kind of the numbers behind the numbers. The registration number, the Secretary of State here in Texas would dispute that. I think that this report was saying 68% of Texans were registered.
Says 68% of Texans. Here's some more the numbers are
68% of Texans are registered according to this report. The Texas Secretary of State's office on their website has it closer to 77 or 78%.
And that would put us way up because
that would put us.
U.S. is 70%.
And the highest one is, again, a very small sample size, but Washington, D.C. is the highest with 82% voter registration. So if it's closer to 77, 78, that's then the state of Texas is doing better than this shows. But it doesn't matter if we have 100% registration if 5% of the people show up to vote.
Right, exactly. Well, what I want to talk to Amy about is this statistic. It says 32% of Texans ages 18 to 24 voted in the 2016 presidential election, and that is lower than the national average. Do you think that some of this education that you're doing for millennials will help translate to just better civic engagement in general?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that's really crazy is that, you know, millennials get a really bad rap. I think a lot of time for
I have a millennial.
Right,
I think they're pretty cool.
Right, it's like that like slacktivism thing, or you know, that they like to share things on Facebook but don't really care about issues. And you know, I think that's not true. I mean, I think they care about a lot of issues. Like you see a lot of big social movements that are being really led by a younger generation, but it's not translating to the polls. And so that is interesting to me, that there's kind of that gap. And a lot of times when I talk to my friends that I think are really civically engaged because they talk about national issues all the time, then sometimes they'll admit to me that they haven't voted in an election recently.
But even talking about it, okay, so there's another statistic that I want to point out. It's only 23% of Texans say in the survey that they talk about politics with their friends and family. I mean, sometimes I have to tell my friends and family, I don't want to talk about politics. I've done, this is overkill. I do that at work. Let me have some time where I don't talk about politics. But it's so strange to me that only, you know, less than a fourth of people talk to their family and friends about politics. I mean, I can even understand if you have disparate viewpoints from your family and friends. That might deter you from talking too much. But you feel like that's probably low. You think that most of the people that you hang around with do talk about politics.
But I don't know that they would call it politics. I think more issue based. You know, I think a lot of people are talking about some of these big, you know, women's rights issues or the Women's March, or talking about Black Lives Matter, or whatever the, you know, is in the news that week, which I would definitely consider to be
politics.
Political. But I don't know that everyone would couch it
would
couch it in that particular way. But what I always tell folks, you know, especially on Facebook where you see all these, sometimes you see your family members' views that you wish you didn't. And I always say everyone has like that cousin, right, or something that, you know, makes your blood boil when you
has
see
an opposite viewpoint from you or most of your friends.
But
or whatever.
what I always advise people is, like, that's your family member. You have a vested, you know, you have an interest in continuing a relationship with them, right? Like, take the conversation offline and grab coffee with them and talk about it, right?
And listen.
And listen, and don't say we're having a debate. That's not a good idea.
I wanted to ask,
let's listen to each other.
When you talk to your friends or the people that you go out and speak with during your little programs that you do, so again, back to the 32% of the younger generation not wanting to vote, do people give you reasons why they have not engaged? I just, and I mean, maybe, and I've just always been a nerd, but I remember being so excited when I finally turned 18
to vote.
To vote, yeah. Especially in a presidential, because my first election was a presidential election.
I won't even say what my first one. My first one was too, but I won't say what year it was.
I mean, I think a lot of times I talk to folks and they say, yes, it's not worth voting. And what drives me crazy is that a lot of times that's someone who's like 23 years old, and they'll be like, you know, I'm just, you know, disengaged, or, you know, I don't believe in this system. It's like, have you tried to participate in the system? How can you already be disengaged? You've maybe been able to vote in 2 elections, maybe. And so I think there's a lot of perception out there. It's like, it's repeated over and over that your vote doesn't matter, it doesn't seem like you're doing anything. There's an engagement gap. And I think
disconnect for sure.
Yeah, there's a huge disconnect. I think people really don't see why their vote would matter, or especially presidential elections. You know, a lot of people say, well, I just don't like either of the candidates. You know, that comes up a lot. And so that's a big one of trying to start that education of, well, if you don't like what those 2 options were, perhaps you should start participating in the process earlier when we're picking who those candidates are. Because I think a lot of people tend to wait until the big election and then are faced with choices that they don't necessarily like and feel like, what's the point of this? But the truth is, you have to start now. You have to be engaging year-round so you can actually have a say in shaping who those candidates are.
And you can start at the local level.
And you know, this is not just a millennial thing, but I think it's really interesting for like that 20-year-old or 23-year-old to say that they're not engaged when they just finished coming out of, most likely, a system that the government helped support. Maybe they went to a public school, maybe they went to a state university. And then they graduate and say, government, when there were all these things that led up to them being 23 years old. But of course, you know, I mean, you get people in, a friend of ours, Ashley Lopez at KUT, when she worked in Kentucky, did a story about the new governor there was going to get rid of the Obamacare system in the state. And she went and talked to people who were on Obamacare and said, why are you still voting for this governor? And they're like, well, I'd rather vote for a Republican than have Obamacare.
Well, that happened.
So they're voting against their own issues.
That happened with the presidential race, too.
It makes me think a lot. One of the things that really got me interested in civic engagement in the first place is when I was in college, I went to a state school in Pennsylvania, and the governor was thinking about raising tuition prices for everyone. So, a direct impact on how much you're paying to go to school. Seems like very obvious. And so the university got together, rented out 10 or 12 buses, bought everyone t-shirts, got a bunch of lunches, had people sign up to say, hey, we're going to have a lobby day at the state capitol building, and we'll ship you guys all up there, and you can talk about why public education is important, right? So I signed up to participate and went, and we couldn't even fill up one bus. All these people signed up.
I thought you were going to say, and it was great, and
no.
I got inspired.
No, it was crazy. The university, and you could see all the buses in line, and then the university just had to turn them away and say, we're not going. They only took one bus of people. So it was deeply disappointing.
So I know we're running out of time, but as a millennial and someone who's so passionate about this, what do you think are some key things that people need to keep in mind who are in your age group or in general to become civically engaged, and why is it so important?
Yeah, I think one thing I like to tell people is just imagine what you do every day. You wake up in the morning, you turn on your lights, you drink your water, you take a shower, you go to work. Everything that you do, local government really impacts. And I know that national government takes up all the news, but it's really at the local level. Your local government determines where your electricity comes from. If it's coming from solar or wind or coal, your water, we're seeing that happening in South Africa now. Do you have a constant supply of water? Is it safe to drink? Can you ride your bike to work or walk, or are you stuck in traffic while you're going there? Can you afford to buy a home? That's a big millennial issue, right? It's like, now that you've moved to Austin and lived here for a few years, can you afford to stay and put down roots? Maybe not because of our situation, right? And so there are all of these things that really impact your everyday life that there's an opportunity to get involved. And that's one of the big motivators behind this book project. Our goal is to print and distribute 5,000 of these by this summer, and we picked that 5,000 number based on looking back at our last election again in 2014, that big city council election. And we realized that almost all of our current city council members, most of them, were elected on 5,000 or less votes, right? And so you can think, if you could educate just 5,000 more people in this city, you could change the shape of elections. That's a lot of power. That's really exciting. So that's what I try and focus on, is the opportunity to really make a difference and be a leader.
And where can people find out about the book?
That's what I was just going to ask.
Yes, afunctionaldemocracy.com. And we're actually launching a Kickstarter campaign a week from today, and that's when you can get your own copy.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Amy, thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for your insight. It's fun. We call this Capital Coffee Talk, and capital with an A, because we do like to talk about Austin as the capital of the state and some of the issues facing our city, although sometimes we stress state politics a lot.
Or talk sports.
No, we don't.
No, we don't talk sports. Sorry.
Mr. Alabama. Yeah, some of us are Longhorn fans. We also want to tell you about a Leadership Austin breakfast tomorrow. We mentioned this 2018 Texas Civic Health Index. That's all going to be revealed tomorrow, and all the statistics will be unveiled at a Leadership Austin breakfast. I'll be moderating a panel on it. It's at the new library downtown on Cesar Chavez at 8 in the morning, and if you want tickets to that, we have some information there. It's leadershipaustin.org. Anything else we need to remind folks of? I think we're going to be talking about...
Early voting starts next Tuesday.
Yes, let's give the dates.
Early voting Tuesday, February 20th. That's going to go through March 2nd, Friday, March 2nd. Election day is March 6th. Again, in Travis County, on both early voting and election day, you can vote anywhere you see a vote sign. You can also vote in either primary, but not both. We have open primaries here. You do not have to register as a Democrat or a Republican. You can just go in. Ben, where's the Libertarian Party and Green Party? These are party primaries for just the Republicans and Democrats. Libertarian and Green Party pick their candidates at state conventions. Those people could be on the ballot then in the fall. In November. Right. So we're not excluding them, but they are not part of this primary election.
And March does matter.
And March does matter.
As you mentioned, it elects a lot of the people that actually serve because some of these districts are so one-sided, Democrat or Republican, so whoever wins the primary is kind of a shoo-in for a lot of these races. So please vote March the 6th. We're the first primary in the entire country. So the eyes of the nation are going to be watching us to see our turnout, who's elected, if the Democrats will gain any momentum against Republicans in the state. So there's some exciting things to watch.
It'll be really fun, but you can't have any fun unless you join the party. No fun for you.
Thanks so much for being with us. We're here every Tuesday at 12:30 talking local and state government and being civic nerds.
That's right.
All right, so thanks for being nerdy with us
you.
today. Make it a great day. We'll see you next Tuesday.
Okay. Yes, drink your coffee.
Thank you, Amy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks.